Hi, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. And Matthew has a shit eating grin on his face right now because he thought I was about to fuck up the intro, and I didn't.
No, that's not why I have a shitty grin on my face.
No? Okay.
No, I was just saying, what should I say when you go, I'm Michael Cole, and I was like, what should I say to fill in the
Oh.
blank afterwards?
Well, I am Michael Cole, one of the co hosts of this podcast, and
I am Matthew Cravat, one of the other co-hosts.
yeah, and this is Wild Scallions. I said scallions. I like
You did.
scallions a lot.
That's wild, Onion.
So today I want to talk about comedy, and we're going to talk about the
Our
philosophy of
philosophies of
our
comedy.
philosophy of comedy. Um,
I know where my comedy comes from and where I think comedy goes and what makes things funny. I don't know what you think makes things funny.
yeah, why don't you start? You have more experience in comedy,
Because I'm old.
and because even if I had been doing something with comedy, if I had done it as long as you, I would say we were like not. I would feel more comfortable starting it off.
Yeah.
So
So so my comedy experience, besides obviously being a fan of comedy, is I started taking improv comedy lessons at 12 years old in New York City. My brother took me to an improv show, loved it. We stayed for the late show. We started going back all the time. He took workshops. My uncle took workshops. Then I, at 12, started taking workshops. And I distinctly remember that I was 12 because when the woman was taking my name and phone number, and when she asked my phone number, somebody walking by goes, "Isn't he a little young for you?" And she looked at me with a smile on her face, said, "When's your bar mitzvah?" And I was like, in October." She goes, "Call me."
nice.
So that's where I got my comedy start. Actually, we're still friends, she and I, so I got over it.
Yeah.
Uh, she actually quoted me like in the book jacket of her improv book. She wrote a book. Her name's Carol Snyder, and she wrote a book called A Doctor and a Plumber and a Rowboat, something like that. And a quote that I said about her workshops is in the book jacket. But my philosophy of comedy is actually not my philosophy of comedy. It is actually um, from a book called The Humor Code, and it's from research done by Dr. Peter McGraw, uh, and he did a research study to clinically find out what makes things funny. And
Yeah.
I really buy into his research strongly. I think it works in almost every case if you massage it a little. And his philosophy is comedy comes down to, and humor, not just comedy, because it goes down to making a funny face at your baby in the bassinet to Shakespearean comedy, like works at like all levels of humor. Um, and that is, it boils down to two words: benign violation. And if I take them backwards, violation in that something happens that you don't expect or that's not in the normal. So it doesn't have to be a surprise because you can watch the same comedy special or movie 20 times and laugh every time and you're not surprised. It can be surprised, but it could be it's so profane that you don't normally use that language.
Or
It could be
absurd.
absurd. It could be Seinfeld just making observations that you know, but people don't usually talk about. Like it's not an observation you usually say. It's just something that you don't expect in some way. And benign in that if it goes too far to offend you or if it scares you, then that's not going to be good comedy. It'll make you angry or upset or afraid. If it's too mundane for your personal sense of humor, then you won't find it comedy. Like it could be too benign. If it's too benign, it's not a good enough violation, is what it boils down to. So it's got to hit
Right.
that sweet spot, which can be different for different audiences. So it's something you have to figure out with an audience as you do comedy. But examples they give is like if when Logan was a baby, if you made a funny face at Logan, he knows what daddy's face looks like. Sticking your tongue out and puffing up your cheeks like a gookie is not what daddy's face looks like, so he laughs. If a stranger in a grocery store made the same face at him, he might get upset and cry because he doesn't know what that face is supposed to look like. So it's not benign when it comes from a stranger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you just reminded me of something that's slightly off topic, but that's what this podcast is all about, is the off topic. Talking about the big stuff, but not the stuff that we talked about. The stuff that we claimed we were going to talk about. No, but when Logan was like 3 or 4 months old, I was just trying to make him laugh. He had just a diaper on, and I blew on his belly, and there was this 1 second pause followed by the most horrifying scream, just like ah, like he looked like I had shot
Blown
him
on
or
his belly.
something, and so when you just said the daddy making a face, I just was thinking about daddy blowing on his belly and just
Right.
like absolutely ruining his day.
Right.
So,
Clearly a violation, but not a benign one.
right. Um, I like I like what you said. I have always kind of gone with the George Carlin explanation, and he does explain it in a bit that he talks about rape jokes, but the concept, it doesn't have to be about rape jokes. So like, but he talks about
Mother Earth was wait it was asking for it. What was Mother
yeah,
Earth wearing?
yeah. But he says um he says the point of a joke, or the way you is you take one thing and blow it way out of proportion. And that's the thing that you like that makes it, and it's similar to what you're saying.
That's
It's
the
just a different,
violation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he said that, and he's wait, like again, he was talking about rape jokes, and so he says, imagine Porky Pig, imagine Elmer Fudd raping Porky Pig, or vice versa. And he says, that's why they call him Porky, and um, but so I have always kind of subscribed to that same concept. I will say, um, when I mentioned philosophy of comedy, I wasn't entirely thinking the way you were thinking about it.
Ah.
Wasn't thinking about necessarily about statement comedy. I was just thinking about I watched the Chris Rock special, and we don't have to talk about that too much because I know you said that you haven't watched it yet. But I watched the Chris Rock special uh, in I can't remember what, a Selective Outrage. It came out like 4 or 5 days ago. I watched it yesterday or the day before, and I'm big into comedy, isn't just watching stand up. I've only done stand up really twice. Once in high school for a talent show, and once for an amateur night. And so I'm not an expert, and I don't want to like claim to be, but I really am a big fan of stand up. I know more about stand up than your average non stand up. Um, and so I've watched a lot of specials. And the last couple years, we one big thing that's kind of been happening with comedy has been this us versus them mentality. There, David Cross was on something recently talking about
Mhm.
um attacking trans people, and there's all the and how he doesn't think that it he doesn't understand the impulse, and there's and I'm not saying I want to get into that, what I was saying, but like one of the things that I have always found is like I find myself being able to laugh at any concept if you construct the joke correctly. You can joke about something I wildly disagree with. If you do it originally or in the right way, I will agree with you. And unfortunately, sometimes, especially as we get into this, like the Ricky Gervais special. Did you see the last Ricky Gervais special?
Probably not.
Yeah. I watched it. There was some good stuff in there. The bit about trans people, and I'm picking that because it's a hot button issue, and I don't like, you can make trans jokes that I'll enjoy, and but he doesn't in that one. Chris Rock
Mhm.
actually did a couple of good ones that I thought were good. They weren't super original, but in their full delivery, but they were better. There was more thought put into it than the average one. But Ricky Gervais in his special was just like, it's a woman with a penis. Don't be insensitive. And it's like, you're not being original. And to an extent, the idea of like hack comedy bothers me, especially when Ricky Gervais I consider to be a really funny guy, arguably one of the best comedy writers of the last 20 years. He should, especially when it comes to like he can do movies, TV shows. He does stand up pretty well, I think, for a
Yeah,
writer.
yeah. I don't find him a great for a writer. Yeah, I don't find him a great stand-up. I think he's a great
He's
producer of TV shows, creator of TV shows.
Yeah,
But
but his
I think
stand-up's
his
good for that being a secondary thing.
yeah, I mean, I think he would not be on a main stage in an auditorium like he is if he didn't have TV shows. Like
Abs-
he didn't earn it as a stand-up. He
yeah,
has an audience because he's famous, not because he's a good stand-up.
absolutely. But I think I still expect higher from him than like if, for example, like if you're in an office setting or a Christmas party with your uncle or your friend or somebody and they make it like it's there. I have a lower expectation for what I will accept as a joke from that person. So like if that person was like, "There's a lady with a penis," I'd be like, "Okay, you don't get it," but that's Whereas this guy has brought some of the most interesting comedy, whether it's through TV shows or whatever, for a while now, and for him to just kind of be repeating the same like I identify as an attack helicopter kind of humor, like that is when I said philosophy, that's what I thought of, and was specifically. And it ends. The trans stuff's the only thing I can think of an example of. But I just think like we have this wild divide on like I think you've said it to me. There's the are you clapping or are you laughing kind of comedy, and there's a lot
Yeah, it
of
was
clapping
I think
comedy.
Al Franken, I think, said that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that if you're clapping, it's because you politically agree with the joke that I made. If you're
right,
laughing, it's because you thought it was funny.
right, right, and if you're laughing, that's where you're going to get people from the other side. What if you like, there's the impulse laugh, and if you laughed, there's an extent to which you shouldn't chastise it afterwards. You can
Right.
say I'm not proud that I laughed at that.
Like the way that Will Smith laughed at Chris Rock until he saw his wife didn't laugh and then he was mad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like you can be upset with yourself for laughing. You can be like, I really shouldn't have
I
laughed at
mean,
that. But
am
but it's
upset with
harder.
myself whenever I laugh at a Will Ferrell movie. Like I
Yeah,
find it base and broad and I laugh my ass off every time.
yeah. But I mean more like a. I can't. I am having. I will say like as much as I know that the Dave Chappelle stuff's been really hot button. I think Dave Chappelle's done a pretty good job at not falling into the cliche of how he's delivered the jokes that so I've laughed at a lot of his stuff that people have been upset with. Chris Rock, his special, I thought there was like the stuff that he joked about, I could see people saying was kind of transphobic. I think it's a lot lighter than Ricky Gervais or Dave Chappelle's, but it was funny. Like I genuinely thought, oh, okay, it's about generation gap. It's like it's explaining cultural gaps, and like I think there was and I laughed at it, even though I
Uh,
wouldn't want to
but I
agree
think
with
part of
it.
it is where is the joke?
Yeah,
And I mean, punching up, punching down is usually a lot, but it's also like, what is the topic of the joke? Like, I
yeah,
think to go back to George Carlin's rape joke routine, he
yeah,
talks about what's the punchline. The punchline is not, ha ha, rape victim.
right,
That's not where his joke is. Um, uh, Greg Proops said um, he was on a documentary called "That's Not Funny," documentary about censorship and off inappropriate topics uh, in comedy way back in like 2013. So the topic has not changed.
yeah,
And he had a quote in there. I remember it was in the trailer for it that said, "Are rape jokes funny? Yes, if they're funny."
yeah,
It's like the topic doesn't make it funny or not funny. The joke makes it funny or not funny, and who is the
yeah,
target of the joke is makes all the difference. And
yeah.
there should be some topics that you go, you know what? I am probably not skilled enough to tell a joke on this topic. I'm going to avoid the topic. Someone
Mhm.
else might be able to tell that funny joke, not me.
Yeah. I will say, okay, you back to the clapping versus laughing comedy. So I did to give a little bit of my history on my comedy career. I did have I was the producer and director of a sketch comedy show at my college my freshman into sophomore year of college. And to give a little context, and I think this is clear in some ways, but like I was conservative at that point in time on almost every issue, I would say, except for gay rights. I was conservative. Um, and we did, and I was the only one in the in the television department, in the club, the only conservative there. And we did a lot of stuff that I found that I would like, if it was not a joke, if it was just done, I would have disagreed with. But we had writers that came up with stuff and I thought it was funny. And I remember very specifically. So, but what I was starting to say is I have the example now better of being a conservative laughing at liberal shit than vice versa, partly because hey, I think there's funnier liberals. But back to that for a second. There was this one sketch we did. It was for Prego sauce. I didn't write the sketch. It was for Prego sauce, and it was we shot it. It was a girl had written it that she was hilarious. I remember her first name, but not her last name. So, and I don't because I haven't talked to her in 20 years almost. So, Kim, I'm sorry if I've forgotten your name, and it's not Kim that was on the episode months ago. Uh, but Kim was hilarious, and she had done this. She had written a bunch of sketches, and we had basically carte blanche to do whatever the fuck we wanted because nobody was watching. It was unclosed. It was on closed circuit to just the campus. So as long as students weren't complaining, we weren't having to deal with like FCC or anything. So we did this sketch about Prego sauce. She had written it. She wanted to star in it, and she went and she got a doll, a baby doll, and she pulled the arms and the legs off of it. And she stuck them in the jar of sauce, sealed up the jar of sauce,
It's in there.
and then she like opened. And then we shot the ad, and she was like, "Prego, made from actual aborted fetuses," and pulls the baby doll like limbs out and like licks the sauce off one and goes, delicious. And we added it in a special effect of a baby going into it, and we shot it. And I was the vice president of the television club, and we shot it. We pretty quickly while I was editing that episode, the president saw it and he 100% disagreed. So we should air it. So we had to go into the studio with everyone in the club because there was like 3 or 4 different shows going on, and everyone in the club had to vote because we were worried that it was and there's 2 of us that voted yes on it was Kim and me voted yes. And they were like, "It's that fucking baby sound. Can we get that out?" I'm like, "If you get that out, it's less funny. If you take, like they just kept picking it apart." And I was like, if you do it, it's less funny." They're like, "How about we just this thing doesn't air because this thing is horribly offensive." And I like at this point in time, I was pro life, and I looked at everyone in the club and I said, "I'm the only person who's not in favor of abortion, and I think this is hilarious. I don't understand the problem." And I'm like, "You guys all are fine with abortion. What is the fucking problem?"
Like,
And
we didn't really kill a baby to make the
right,
joke,
right.
right?
And I just was like, I don't get it. And so I get called out a lot now that I'm a liberal by like people like, "Oh, you don't laugh because you don't think it's because it's not liberal enough for you." And I'm like, "No, there's lots of reasons why, like because I can still laugh at Republican stuff if it's funny."
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, you said offhanded earlier that I think more liberals are funnier than Republicans and conservatives, and I don't think that's it. I think what it is, conservatives are just as funny as liberals when they're not talking about politics jokes,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
conservative politics are not usually funny. Their side of the story is, hey, let's be hateful to people. Let's let people starve and die without health care. And it's
yeah.
hard to make that funny when that's the good side of the argument. So from political comedy, it's hard for them to be funny because their politics is not funny politics,
True.
and like exaggerating, liberal politics can only be so funny because what do you can exaggerate? Oh, they really, really care about people, ha ha. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they do. It's not. So I think
Yeah.
Tim Allen was really funny when he shut up and did stuff about man stuff and made funny noises. He's
Yeah.
not funny when he talks about politics because he has to usually straw man it like crazy to try to find a way to make a joke about it. It's never
That's true.
correct.
That is true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I will say I'm gonna throw my sister under the bus for a second. She's not. I don't know where my sister's political affiliation lies, but uh, you know that Ashton Kutcher show, the Ranch or something like that. Ranch.
I happily do not.
Yeah, I think it's called the Ranch, and it's him, the mustache guy that talks like this and is a cowboy.
The Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. There we go. Um,
It wasn't a great impersonation, but a mustache got me.
yeah. So it's Sam Elliott, the other guy from that '70s show, and Ashton Kutcher, the Danny Masterson, and it was this sitcom on Netflix, and it was still doing the um, a live audience and like with the canned laughter, and I watched like the
It's
first
a live audience, and they sweeten the laughter with the canned
yeah,
laughter.
I watched the first 15 minutes of this episode of the first episode, and I was just like, eh. And I honestly I just assumed because I assumed it was I don't like canned laughter anymore. I don't like the live studio audience experience for the most part. I can go back and watch old stuff. I don't want new stuff that's like that. And so just assumed that. And at one point, my sister came. We were on vacation or something with them, and they were like, "Have you watched The Ranch? It's the best show on TV." And I was like, I don't like it. And she like went on this like little tirade about me being, it's because it's not liberal enough for you. And I was like, first of all, it's Ashton Kutcher. Is he not liberal? And then like,
He's married
secondly,
to
like,
Demi Moore.
how is it? He was.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
now,
saying he was
yeah,
married to Demi Moore. It's pretty liberal
yeah,
bastion of liberal
yeah.
politics.
But I was like, I'm like, I thought, I don't know, I would never have assumed. I didn't get far enough into it to
Right.
assume that
I
there
didn't
was
get
a
to a political joke.
political bend to this show, and like I don't know, Danny Masterson. All I know about his personal life is the rape allegations. Like I don't know anything else. I know he's a Scientologist and there's rape allegations, but I don't know if he's liberal or conservative or anything else. Sam Elliott, I I know that he looks like a liberal, but or looks like a
I
conservative.
was thinking conservative.
But
Yeah.
I like I've seen him in a bunch of shit that I thought like, oh, this guy like he's an
I mean,
actor. He's
he's a
married to the
ghost
woman.
writer.
Yeah, he's married to the woman from The Graduate. Like I don't know, like he could be super liberal and just look like that. I have no idea. And the idea that it was thrown at me like that. So that's why I get a lot of that from people is like people saying like, "Oh, you don't like it cuz you're liberal." And it's like, "No, if it's funny, I'll enjoy it." And I can also say like, "Oh, like Chappelle's got some stuff in there that I didn't like about trans people, and I still thought it was an overall pretty good special. I thought he's done a good job with some stuff. I think he's thoughtful about what he's doing. Like he's whether or not you agree with the thoughts, there's stuff in there about it. It's he's trying to come at it from a different angle. And then you look at the Ricky Gervais thing, and it's literally like a woman with a penis. What are you, stupid? Like that's all it is, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think
oh,
he's trying to he like that's probably one thing I don't think he's a great stand-up because his stand-up is an honest stand-up. He's like, oh, this is a topic that's in the news. I'm going to be shocking with it and write some jokes that are about this shocking topic. And it's not something he has any real feelings on. It's not something that really he has any expertise on. There's nothing that makes him a source of social political commentary to make a joke about.
right,
And
yeah,
that's why his jokes fall flat on it because he's not good at it because that's not what it is. When he talks about celebrities, he could be really funny because he lives in that world. He actually has opinions on that. That's closer to his real life.
yeah. I'm forgetting the comedian's name. James Acaster. Do you know him?
Yes, my son makes me sure I know every British comedian because he watches every panel show and every
James Acaster
talk
is
about.
fucking brilliant, and he's like my
He,
age.
what I love about James Adcaster is he comes across like a total moron,
Hmm.
and then when you listen to what he's saying, you're like, oh no, he's brilliant. Like he
Yeah,
just speaks like a moron, and then
yeah,
he's actually like super insightful.
yeah. His last special, he has, and he also has that. I don't know that it's a speech. I think it's the accent
The
specific,
way that he
but it,
speaks is
yeah,
interesting.
it sounds almost like he could be on Ducktales. Like there's something about it's not quite Donald Ducky, but it's something there. But I think it's specific to his region of England. But
Yeah.
he has a bit on his last special, which I think came out before Ricky Gervais's last special. But Ricky Gervais has now hit out or commented on trans people so much that James Acaster came out and he has this great bit where he says I'm an edgy comedian now. I have to if my joke offends you, well too bad snowflakes. Because I'm an edgy comedian now, and he just repeats it a bunch of times because he's pretending to be tweeting that back at people who've protested his thing, and he says it a bunch of times, and and he goes, some comedians feel like they need to come out and do 4 minutes taking down trans people because trans people have had so much have had so much so it's they've had it easy for too long or whatever, and he does this whole thing, and he goes, but I don't want to mention who it was because I don't really want to get into that. All I know is that like all of a sudden trans people have had too much privilege, and Ricky Gervais hasn't had quite enough. And he like completely just throws Ricky Gervais
Hmm.
under the bus, and I loved because I do like Ricky Gervais, I follow him still, but I think I just am. It's hard to connect those things, but I think James Acaster did a great job of like just like completely taking that
Yeah,
down.
eviscerated. Well played, James. So in improv, it's really common to hear people say, like, saying, I don't think Ricky Gervais is such a good stand-up comedian. I don't think that's where his skills lie. I think he tries too hard. And it makes me think in improv, it's really common to hear, and if you take an improv class, an instructor will say, don't, don't try to be funny. You're gonna ruin it if you try to be funny.
Yeah,
And that is an accurate statement as far as it goes. My problem is I would take classes and they would say, stop trying to be funny. And I'd be like, I'm not. I am funny. When anything happens anywhere around me, everything that goes through my head is comedy responses to what's going on. I have to try not to be funny. And that's when I sound artificial. Like at work,
mhm,
I'm trying not to be funny and I'm not being my authentic self. In real
yeah,
life, it's always a joke. And so when I taught improv, directed improv, I was always going with Yoda. Don't try anything. Be the thing you are. Like
yeah,
play into your strengths. If you're great at characters, be a character person. If you're great at narrative, be narrative. If you're great at being witty and funny with every joke, be witty and funny. Be your natural self, and it'll be the best. The caveat would be don't ruin the scene because of it. Like if you're going to do a punchline that's going to stop the scene 2 minutes in when it's a 5 minute scene, well, hold back on doing that. Don't kill the scene for your one laugh.
yeah,
But if you're a funny person, be a funny person. So it's always been a deep part of my philosophy of comedy teaching has been be who you are and what you are. Like in workshops, do whatever you want, work on your strengths, work on whatever you want. Someone's
right,
paying to see you, do what you do best, make it great. Like if you
yeah,
came to my improv shows, you would rarely see me sing because I do not sing particularly well. I'm really funny with lyrics. I can make up amazing funny lyrics, but there were three people in my troupe who do musical theater all the time. Why would I not focus on their singing when you're paying to see the show? Like if
yeah,
I'm in a situation where I'm put in a spot and I have to sing, yeah, I'm going to be funny as hell, but no one's going to walk out. My dad used to complain, you were off key there. And I was like, yeah, dad, I'm your son. You're a musician. I don't know what off key means. I know you say it all the time. It's some code word you use, but I don't know what it means. All I
yeah,
know is people laughed at me. Just like you're not funny when you sing, I'm not trying to be singy when I'm funny. It just
yeah.
happens to go.
Um, I will say the what you just said about the being off key and you not knowing what that means. Um, I have never purchased or really received marijuana in marijuana form in baggies. And
I think
people
that's
will
a natural form. It grows in baggies.
I mean as opposed to like edibles. Uh and and potheads will talk to me and potheads will talk to you in general like you know all the shit that they know. So they'll be like, "Well, do you want a nickel bag or a dime bag, or do you, or did they get caught with this or did they get caught with that?" And I'm like, I have no fucking clue. And they're like, "Well, was it an ounce or was it a like eighth or was it a?" And I'm like, none of these things are even like adding
I
up
don't
to
do
me. Like,
metric. I don't know.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, I have no idea what this answer is. I actually almost got I got patted down one time because when I was like 18 or so, I got pulled over for a padiddle. Do you know what a padiddle is, or is that a regional thing?
I would think that's some sort of pedophilic thing that someone from Massachusetts does. You
No, it's
pediddle kids?
when you have one headlight out, it's called a padiddle, and you punch your friend with a
Oh,
padiddle.
okay. I always thought it was spot the one-eyed dog has possessed your car.
Oh, okay. No,
That's just something came up with me and a friend one night. That's
oh, no, we
sorry.
call it padiddle in
And I
Massachusetts.
would
So
say if she's listening, but she passed away from breast cancer, so she's not listening. But if she were, oh, she'd be laughing.
yeah, so we.
Haha,
I'm
bring you
sorry.
down there.
You just
Nothing funnier than
fuck up
Jennifer
the
dying of breast cancer.
fucking up my rhythm here. So we got I got pulled over. I was driving my friend's car because he was tired and we were like coming back from like literally like play rehearsal in high school. So like the nerdiest shit possible. Like, and we're coming back. There's three of us, and we get pulled over because we had a headlight out. The cop comes up, and we're tired. It's like, I don't know. It's not even that late. It's like 8 o'clock, but we were tired from we had just done like 2 hours or 3 hours of rehearsal, and not to mention we'd probably been up since like 5 a.m. because that's what high school was like for us. And we're tired, and the cop pulls us over, and he comes over to the window, and he's like, "Uh, you whose car?" I give him the license and registration, and it's my license and my friend's registration. He goes, "Whose car is this?" I'm like, "It's his." "Why isn't he driving?" And I was like, and "He's tired." And he's like, "You boys had any pot tonight?" And I was like, "No, sir." And I had never tried pot. Like, and he was like, "Not even a nickel bag." And I was like, "I don't know what a nickel bag is." And I literally said that to him. And he pulled us out of the car, like not pulled physically, but he got us all out. I was the only one of us that was 18. So the two minors he did not do this to. Um, but he patted me, like did a full pat down on me.
Did he
And
make you cough?
but no, but he did a pat down, and like I just was like, because I didn't know what a fucking nickel bag was. I genuinely didn't. To this, so my dad explained to me in the last couple years, he had, because I told my dad that story, and he was like, "Oh, a nickel bag is 5 fingers of weed," and I was like, he's like, "If you hold a Ziploc bag, it's 5 fingers worth of weed. One, two, three, four, five. It's a nickel,
That
like
that that
five."
doesn't seem right. I don't know
And
what a nickel bag is, but that doesn't seem right
I
because a
was like,
dime bag would be really big.
and I was like, "Dad," I was like, and he says, "And you can get one for $5, and it's a nickel bag, or something like that." And I was like, I think weed has changed, and because my dad, if my dad had ever bought weed, which by based on that story, I'm going to assume maybe he has. I don't know. That would have been 40 plus years ago, and I
Yeah.
just got to be like, could you get this much weed for $5? And I
I
know that
like the
weed
$5 part. I don't like the 5 finger part.
I don't. I just remember being like, that seems like a shit a shitload of weed, and I know that weed was not a big. Weed was not what it is now. Like, whereas weed's super potent, and if someone of your age who did smoke as a kid but hasn't smoked in a long time, if they were to start smoking, they're always going to be like, "Hey, just so you know, this isn't the same shit." But like 5 fingers worth of weed. I mean, five big fat fingers are different, so maybe it's like five little girl fingers, but Jesus Christ, that's a lot of weed.
That's funny.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so based on you said don't try to be funny. Uh and that reminded me of the thing. So we recorded a beginning of this. So we recorded 2 episodes tonight. We recorded the first 10 minutes, and then our guest from last week's episode was ready to go, and we're like, "Oh, we'll go back to this episode after." And so we recorded this episode twice, or the beginning 3 minutes twice, but I didn't, in the second version, didn't remember to mention it. But that was every episode since Matthew has been on, I have been doing this thing where I'm concentrating on making sure our sound levels are as good as possible, trying to think of like, okay, here's the topic beats that we need to hit, and sometimes I have I have like a Word doc or whatever, and Matthew, being the guy that makes all these jokes, like you just said, uh, he he makes the jokes, and I'm like, yeah, nice, and like I'm realizing that I'm so slow, and I'm the one in normal life when I'm not with Matthew. With almost everybody else, I'm the one doing that to everybody else. And I was like, and I've been telling people at work, like it might be cathartic, like because I can be so overwhelming, like to hear me get overwhelmed, like or get like just not know what to say, because like the funny part of my brain that like come up with a funny witty response part of my brain has kind of like taken a back seat on this podcast a lot, because I'm concentrating on three or four different things, and I just think it is interesting for those people who I am constantly doing that to, where they'll say something like, "Oh, we're gonna have pork for dinner. Oh, I'm gonna pork your mom for dinner." You know, that's
So
a
so you don't make
terrible
jokes around them either.
idea. Yeah, well,
Yeah, and that was going to be my response, was to tell you about the don't try to be funny. I can't help but
yeah,
make a joke. It's what I do. I'll be inauthentic when I'm not making a joke. Catch me at a
yeah.
funeral. I kill at funerals.
Oh my god. And what
Which
if
makes
I'm
another funeral happen right afterwards because I killed it. And so it's just like it's a vicious cycle of funerals.
yeah, if I'm intoxicated in any way, my filter goes off too, and so like I've been intoxicated at work, drunk at work probably. And like we were at like a putting green like a year and a half ago, and one of my coworkers just kept being like, uh put the ball in the hole, get the, and I just like and I just kept, every single time she'd speak I would say something, and I'm like, you got to stop setting me up, you're just like making it hard. I'm like, I'm a little too drunk, I can't shut it off right now. Like I can't be
And that's
appropriate.
why I don't get drunk around coworkers. Like a place where everyone else is getting smashed, and I'm
Oh
like, nope, because I know what I'll say, and you have no freaking idea what goes on in this head. I'm not letting it out.
yeah. I
You may think you do. Oh, we're all drunk. We're all saying funny things. Yeah, yeah. You have no idea.
I'm actually quite, no, it's funny because I'm a pretty sober person. I don't drink very often. Um, I would say that in the last 2 years since I started my current job, 75% of my alcohol consumption has been at work functions. Because we have a team that likes to drink, and it's a fun way of bonding, and so they all have a different impression of me than like I would think anybody else would. But I was at a trip. I was on a trip to Houston a year and a half ago with work, and I got a little drunk, and I was like dropping it low and picking it up slow, and I had like my drink in my hand. You know what that means when I say that? Drop it low and pick it up slow.
You're playing with your testicles.
No, my butt, just like doing like a very feminine, like almost strippery move, like where I put my butt almost down to my heels like in a squat, and then slowly bring it back up like a stripper. And I was doing that, and they all think it's hilarious, and I will hear it all the time, like anytime there's gonna be alcohol, like, oh, Mike's gonna drop it low and pick it up slow. And it's so they all think that of me, and that's interesting when I'm not a very drunk person. I will also say that.
Yeah. I probably do drink more with my coworkers than I do in most of the situations because I'm not a big drinker
Yeah.
either. But I go to France, and every meal, it's wine comes out. Champagne generally before the meal, and then wine with the meal. And you have 2 or 3 glasses of wine with the meal. But I'm a really big guy, and I'm eating with a meal, and I know not to drink socially afterwards. So I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
done with that. I'm like, let's go out. You guys have fun going out. I've had enough where um, when my filter starts going, hey, should I say this? And once I'm saying that to myself, I know that I need to stop drinking because I'm going
Yeah.
to say something I should. And the problem is I can go much further, much harder than anyone else in the room can. They don't know that. They're always like, oh, we know how, risque you are. No, no, you don't. You know what I'm willing to say in front of you. You don't know what goes on in this head.
Yeah. That's true. That's how it, it's fun when being around you is fun because I am usually the funny person in the room, and it's nice to not be. I will say also, so I just had a guys' weekend this past weekend with two of my best friends from high school, and I'm not I don't consider myself a particularly masculine man or
I don't either.
stereotypically me or you.
You.
Yeah, no, it's good because I'm not. My friend Pat that was on, he he is that he was on the episode about masculinity, and him and I, and he was one of the two friends that I was with. The three of us was talking, and I just realized like, oh, I'm not that like, because they are very comfortable with homosexuality for straight guys, and like it's just so nice being like, oh, I'm not the oddity right now. But the other thing I was gonna say is that, like, whereas I'm not the funny guy with you, I'm not the filthiest person with the two of them, or my friend Paul, who wasn't there. He's been on the show. And it's nice because I think everyone else in my life thinks I'm the craziest, wildest, most intense. And then I get with my friends and I'm like, oh no, I sometimes I'm the tame one. Like not all the time, but sometimes I'm the tame one. With my friend Paul, almost always I'm the tame one. But
Yeah. When I was in a comedy group called Comedy Sports, which is a nationwide franchise, and there's no longer a North Carolina franchise for it, but back when there was, I was with it, and before I struck out for my own group. And what we used to say jokingly as a recruiting thing was, if you're the weird one around your friends, you'll fit in around us.
nice. That's
Because it was
good.
like, as every one of us was the funniest person in our social circle, but
Yeah.
together we were all about the same. I mean, I was still the funniest. The complaint I got from the management is I shouldn't make jokes during rehearsal, like from the audience. And I'm like, everyone does. Yeah, but when you do it, everyone stops to laugh.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm being singled out, but that's actually a good reason to get singled out in a room
Yeah.
full of comedians.
Yeah. It's it, it's fun being in that situation. It is funny though talking to when you're around people that you're being funny in front of and they're not used to funny people. Like they'll be like, "Oh, you should be a comedian," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm the funniest person in this room.
Right.
I'm not
Oh,
the
people
funniest."
ask me why I'm not a professional comedian, especially when I performed improv for so many years. And I'd say, well, if I was as funny at 18 as I was at 30, I could have been a professional comedian. But when I was as funny as I was and talented and knew the acting and learned the business and blah blah blah, I had a kid, I had a wife. I didn't have a place for a comedy career then for me. Other
Yeah,
people can do that. I unfortunately I had a good enough day job that I couldn't quit it for comedy kind of thing.
right. Yeah, that makes
It's funny.
sense.
I also think about I went on a business trip to Orlando 2 years in a row, 2019, 2020. Um, and I have a buddy who was in my comedy group in Raleigh who retired to Orlando. And both times I went on business, one of the first nights I was there, we got together at an Irish pub for dinner, some live music. And for him to unload every filthy, disgusting joke he thought of in the last year, because he taught music at preschools and he worked part-time at Disney, and then his wife didn't want to hear his crap anymore, so he couldn't tell all these horrible jokes that he'd hear or think up, so he would just be unloading them on me because I'm the only one he could tell them to without thinking worse of him for it, no matter
Yeah,
how horrible they were. Because when you get comedians together, there's no limit to how horrible and debased and terrible they can be together in the green room, because we all know we don't mean it. We all know we're not creating a culture of
yeah,
this is acceptable in the real world, because we get it. And even if we know it's stuff that I wouldn't say on stage because I don't want some yeehaw in the audience to think I mean it, I'll
yeah.
say it backstage with my buddies.
Oh, that's something that I did with my friends this weekend. Was like there was a bunch of jokes that I just couldn't make in front of other people, not because they would think I was bad, but because they would think it was permission to be bad. So like we were talking about, I went to Massachusetts back on Father's Day weekend, and it was like we landed at like 12 to between 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. But Logan, we hadn't eaten and we needed some food, and the only place in Boston that was open was this little burger place next to Fenway Stadium. And the burger place, we order online, or we and I'm just reiterating my order to the person as we get to the front, and Logan's in the back seat of a car and Sarah's there, but so I'm running into the place, and I'm reiterating the order, and I said something about an apple juice box, and this fucking douchebag is like, "You getting a juice box, bro? You getting a juice box?" and he's just like making fun of me. And we're talking, my friends and I. So that was back in June. My friends and I this weekend were talking about how much we hate that kind of Massachusetts person, specifically like a
Was that
masshole.
Ben Affleck working the window?
Yeah, no. It would have been so much nicer if it was. And so we're talking about that guy, and I was like, it's weird how they can just make anything seem kind of homophobic. And so we just, from the rest of the time, we're like, you sucking on my juice box, bro? And we were, because like clearly, like the idea, like it was like, you gay? You getting a juice box? And I was like, oh, I couldn't make this joke in front of almost anybody else because they won't get it. My friends get that, like that type of person is like, oh, what are you, a queer? Like, and we just kept doing that,
The
like,
fact that he's the butt of the joke, you're not
yeah,
agreeing with the homophobia or even the toxic
right,
masculinity. You're making fun of that.
yeah.
Yeah. So a quick, maybe before we wrap up, a quick example of a favorite story of mine. My buddy and I were once asked to do a presentation for a bunch of old Jews that we were doing at a Jewish temple in Raleigh. Was having senior university weekend where they just invite speakers on different topics to come in, and we were asked to do a speech on comedy or a presentation on comedy. And we did a thing called improv comedy behind the curtain. And our premise was we had like slides, like a business presentation. And for each slide was about a different thing about comedy, or different element of what we do, how we build character, of how we stay in the moment, just various things about uh, give and take. And for each one, we then played an improv game, the two of us, to show, it's either a demonstrated or show this is a game we play that focuses on that skill to help us build that skill. And at the time, we were basically doing a comedy show for the audience while educating them. And my opening slide was on the humor code and about that benign violation topic. And I explained it to them, no joke in that one, just explaining it to them and getting it across to them, the idea. Then we were doing our show. A half an hour into the 45-minute show, we're playing a game that you may have seen on Whose Line Is It Anyway, called World's Worst, where they give you a situation and you take turns stepping up and giving the world's worst example of it. And I was pointing out, for us, for our group, we use that as a character game where you aren't just saying the situation, you are being the character saying the thing. And that was our skill build and why we did it differently than some other groups. And my improv group was unique in that almost everyone in it, except me, was a community theater person learning comedy as opposed to someone who just thought they were funny and wanted to learn comedy. My group was all theater people, and they tended to do character and narrative without a second thought. So we did this deeper thing. So it was the world's worst preschool teacher. And I walked out and was like, hey, pretty cute for a 5-year-old. And everybody laughed because that would be the world's worst preschool teacher. And then after the joke, I said to this audience of senior citizens, hey, you guys realize I made a pedophilia joke there, right? I said 5-year-olds are cute. And they all got real quiet. I'm like, and you all laughed, and they all got even quieter. I said, that's benign violation because you guys, it was benign when I said that horrible violation because for the last half hour, you guys have been getting to know me and we have a rapport, and you know that wasn't me, that was the character, and I wasn't actually saying that's a good thing. And then they all got a little looser. I'm like, yeah, they're the light in their eye. They're getting benign violation, what I meant by benign or not benign. And then I said, but imagine if Mikey and I had come out here and the very first thing we did was that joke. And
Mm.
they all went, oh, like, exactly. That's where it would have been only violation and nothing benign about it. And that's why comedians get in trouble today when somebody takes out a phone and records 20 seconds of their comedy routine and publishes it online out of context, and they seem like a horrible monster because there's no rapport with the audience that lets you know that that's not them, that's the joke.
I'm sending you a real quick screenshot, and I would like you to read it in Blooper's voice.
It's like, am I going to get in
Um,
trouble for this?
no, no, it's so I watched the movie Elvis on the way down to and anybody who's listening to this episode who has watched the movie Elvis, Elvis sounds not Elvis, sorry. Colonel Tom Parker sounds exactly like, to me, sounded very much like Matthew's puppet character that he does of Blooper. And so I just sent him one of the lines from the movie, and I just would like him to read it because it's been cracking me up all weekend. All right, go ahead.
Okay, hi Michael, it's me, Booba.
Hi,
Nice to meet
Blooper.
you.
Okay, I'm going to read this wine now. I'm not warmed up. I haven't not vocally warmed up, but I'm going to read it. Poor Mrs. Kennedy. A tragedy. Tragedy, but it has nothing to do with us.
Perfect. Okay, so maybe the inflection of the voice isn't the same, but the accent that you do for Blooper is exactly what Tom Hanks does for Colonel Tom Parker. And
What
I
do you mean
don't know
accent? I don't know what you're talking about.
the voice. You know what I'm saying?
What?
The inflection,
I
the
don't
way.
understand.
All right, the eyes staring at me is upsetting me when he's like looking hurt.
Okay, I'm going to go away now because I don't understand you. Where's Wogan? I like Wogan. He's the nice one.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's not the nice one to me. He was talking some shit last night because he hadn't played. We got Miles Morales for PS5, and he didn't play all weekend while I was gone because he couldn't get past some stuff. I get past it for him. I start cooking dinner, and he's like, "Dad, I'm so much further in this game than you are." I'm like, "Because of me." And I was like, "It's like you're shit talking," and he's like, "Yeah, because you suck." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You said I was shit talking, so I want to shit talk." I'm like, "No, you were shit talking." But all right, I don't have anything to plug this week. I just want to ask everybody, please subscribe, download every back episode because I feel like you're gonna like them and it helps us. And Matthew, got anything that you want to plug? I know.
I mean, since we had a guest, I guess we'll plug the guest channel. Blooper has a channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you search for Blooper Puppet, Blooper, you will probably find, yeah, other stuff will come up too because bloopers with puppets in it will come up. But he's a green puppet with blue hair. Actually, if you do like Blooper Puppet and then a movie title like Godfather or Superman or He-Man, and the Masters of the Universe. He does a lot of movie clips himself. His
Oh,
interpretation of movies is like his sizzle reel kind of thing. So that will probably help bring up one of his videos.
okay, good. I'm glad that you just said that and gave me another thing to run topic wise or to talk about real quick. So one of my sketches that I really loved doing on my sketch show in college was it was similar to what SNL does with like auditions, celebrity auditions for other movies. It's basically the exact same concept, and I don't remember having seen that on SNL first. So the 5 or 6 impressions that me and this other guy on the show could do, we would do them, and we would be like, okay, what are we gonna do? What character? And so he basically did Marlon Brando, and that was it. And I did a bunch of others like Jack Nicholson, Sean Connery, like the easy ones. But his Marlon Brando, like I remember him doing the Incredible Hulk, and he actually ripped his shirt, and he was just like, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry," and then he just ripped his shirt, and then we did a bunch, like 5 or 6 of these different ones of Marlon Brando being somebody, and the last one, like the one that capped off the episode, was Dana, 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 Dana. I'm a big scary shark. And his impression was a little bit better than mine is, but like, I didn't do Brando. I did the other characters, but when you just said Blooper doing The Godfather, I just thought of that.
Yeah,
All right.
he does not do Brando in The Godfather. He does James Caan actually.
Oh, your new nice Ivy League suit. That speech.
Exactly,
I think
exactly.
I've
That's the
seen
one
it.
he does.
That one. Yeah, I think I've seen that him doing that because that's yeah. Get his brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
Yeah, kapow! Yeah, and he did Godfather 2. Oh, I don't know if I remember which thing he did. He did do Brando though. He did um,
Okay.
Brando in Superman.
Oh,
Did
nice.
Brando
I
as
could see
Jor-El.
Blooper doing the speech, the Michael speech to Fredo. The "You're not my brother. I don't want to know you. I When you come to see our mother, I want to know 2 days in advance so I cannot be there." Like Blooper doing that speech would be awesome.
It's funny because I spent a summer in 2020, I think July maybe, like every day I did another thing, and then like a year later, one of my coworkers requested Godfather 2 specifically,
Yeah.
so I had to go figure one out for Godfather 2. So that one was added in later. Um, I don't know.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I have to
thank
go back
you.
and watch it and see what it was.
Yeah. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for listening, and we will talk to you next week. And we don't know what the topic is going to be yet because we're recording this a week ago, so we are not that far ahead yet. So we'll see
Yeah.
you next week.